Hello, this is Jorge Herrera, and we continue with the reading of our book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth by Nelson Nash. This is a great book because he shares his own experiences and he shares his own beliefs. And he was very generous and he was very well educated in economics. And he led his life by following the Bible. That's why he um, he used this part in the book. So anyway, chapter 12. This is the third part because it's a long chapter. On the first part, we went from the contract that God did with Jacob, the son of Israel, the son of Isaac, the one that tricked his brother Esau or Esau on his birthright, and along with his mother Rebecca. Then Joseph was sold to slavery, and then he gets into a prominent position with the Pharaoh. And we got up to Moses on this chapter. And most everybody knows the story of Moses. He was raised in the Pharaoh palace, but he learned that he was not an Egyptian. He was an Israelite. And he witnessed an Egyptian giving a beating to an Israelite, so he gets upset and he kills him. And some people see that, so the Pharaoh learns about that, and he decides to kill Moses. That's why he has to leave. Then Moses lived outside of Egypt for 40 years. He got married there, and then while he is taking care of the sheep that belonged to his father-in-law, he goes to Mount Sinai, and he no, I think it was Mount Horeb. Let's see. Yeah, was Mount Horeb. I'm learning the Bible. So he saw that there was a bush there, that it was in fire, but it was not being consumed. Anyway, that's where God told Moses that he had to go to Egypt to get the Israelites out of slavery. And so that was chapter 2. I mean, part 2 of chapter 12, where we went from Moses to getting out of Egypt in the Exodus, then staying in the wilderness, then going to the promised land, where they basically were just able to see it and inspect it, but they were not able to live there yet. So they went up to the desert, out to the desert again, and that's where we are now on part 3. So as a result of this rebellion, God gave them the graduate course in learning to be dependent on Him. They are back to more years of wandering in the wilderness. Except for Joshua and Caleb, all the adults who came out of Egypt perished during this time. Only their children finally made it to the promised land. Before going in, God gave them a large number of briefings on what they were expected to do and reassurances that He would be with them as long as they kept their end of the covenant. So after the 40 years had passed, they finally are ready to go into the land that God had promised them. Moses is speaking. Then I said to you, do not be terrified, do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God, who is going before you, will fight for you as he did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes and in the desert. There you saw how the Lord your God carried you, as a father carries his son, all the way you went until you reached this place. Deuteronomy 1:29 to 31. On the plains of Moab, by the Jordan, across from Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into Canaan, drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you. Destroy all their carved images and their cast idols, and demolish all their high places. Take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given you the land to possess. Numbers 33:50 to 53. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land, those you allow to remain will become barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides. They will give you trouble in the land where you will live, and then I will do to you what I plan to do to them. Moses gives further instructions to them, and when the Lord your God has delivered them over to you and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods, and the Lord's anger will burn against you and will quickly destroy you. This is what you are to do to them. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their idols in the fire. Deuteronomy 7 2 to 5. Remember the source of blessings. Moses continues, when you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord our God for the good land he has given you. Be careful that you do not forget him, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees that I am giving you this day. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Deuteronomy 8:10 to 14. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your forefathers as it is today. If you ever forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and worship and bow down to them, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Deuteronomy 8:17 to 19. This is a classical example of the arrival syndrome that I describe in my previous book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I can't think of anything more detrimental to people than this. Moses further explains to them, after the Lord your God has driven them out before you, do not say to yourself, the Lord has brought me here to take possession of this land because of my righteousness. It is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you are going in to take possession of their land, but on account of the wickedness of these nations. The Lord your God will drive them out before you to accomplish what we swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Understand then that it is not because of your righteousness that the Lord your God is giving you this good land to possess, for you are a stiff necked people. Deuteronomy 9:4 to 6. Did they carry out God's instructions? Absolutely not. But Manasseh did not drive out the people of Beth Shan or Tanakh or Dor or Iblim or Megiddo and their surrounding settlements, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that land. When Israel became strong, they pressed the Canaanites into forced labor, but never drove them out completely. Nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer, but the Canaanites continued to live there among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the Canaanites living in Kitron and Ahalol, but remained among them. But they did subject them to forced labor. Nor did Asher drive out those living in Akko or Sidon or Alab or Aksib or Helbach or Apek or Rehob, and because of this the people of Asher lived among the Canaanite inhabitants of the land. Neither did Naphtali drive out those living in Beth Shemesh or Beth Anath, but the Naphtalites too lived among the Canaanite inhabitants of the land, and those living in Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath became forced laborers for them. There are more examples cited, but you get the picture. Instead of driving them out, they made slaves of them. Since they were slaves in Egypt, did they think this is the way to live? All the adults who left Egypt perished in the wilderness wandering. Maybe this is just the nature of man, enslave others to benefit my own desires. Looking down through history, this seems to be the case. Judges, but no government. And so, for a lengthy period, they lived under a system of judges. There was no government. Under such freedom, a nation cannot help but prosper. And when you prosper, you can count on it. Others will do their best to steal from you. That was the first labor saving device, theft. Don't produce anything, just steal what others produce. The people said to Samuel, you are old, and our sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel, So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all that people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected as their king, but me, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will do." 1 Samuel 8 5 to 19. Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking for a king. He said, "This is what the king who will reign over you will do. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take a tenth of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants. Your men servants and maid servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own sake, of his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, and the Lord will not answer you in that day. 1 Samuel 8 10 to 18. And so Samuel told them in no uncertain terms what a king would do to them. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. "No," they said, "we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and go out before us and fight our battles." When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered, "Listen to them and give them a king." 1 Samuel 8 19 to 22. At last they have a king, government. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was chosen. Then they ran and brought him out, and as he stood among the people, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people." Then the people shouted, "Long live the king." 1 Samuel 10 23 to 24. Saul was a very successful soldier, big, strong, handsome, all the leadership qualities to be a king. And he was a good man, very humble, and surprised that he was to become king. To be anointed king was the ultimate experience one could have. However, when one is placed in such position, it is pretty easy to get off track. He began to think he was in charge. Today, the favorite word to describe this phenomenon is hubris. Just one little thing can go a long way. Can go a long way. Samuel had warned of this possibility, but no one listened. Saul was visible, and God was not. Saul overstepped his authority and thus sealed his fate. Man has one eternal problem. He wants to be God. To see the ultimate manifestation of this malady, watch what he tries to do with government. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So Saul went from good to bad to very bad over a period of time. Imagine that. Soon it became evident to the Israelites that they had made a big mistake. The people all said to Samuel, "Pray to the Lord your God for your servants, so that we will not die, for we have added to all our other sins the evil of asking for a king." 1 Samuel 12 to 19. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. Um, I am grieved that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. 1 Samuel 15:20. His successor was David, a man after God's own heart. Down through the ages, he was recognized as the great king of all time. But David goofed up in big way. His involvement with Bathsheba, David tried to worm his way out of the situation. But Nathan, the prophet, brought him face to face with the error of his ways. Do you realize that a brave man Nathan was? He could easily have had his head cut off for his action. Sometimes I wonder, where is Nathan today? We need Nathan badly. Unlike Saul, though David repented, then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. 2 Samuel 12 to 13. But no matter how good a person may be, he will still reap the consequences of that kind of action. It can manifest itself in any number of ways. In this case, one of the results was a totally dysfunctional family. First, his son Amnon raped his half sister, Tamar. Her brother by the same mother was Absalom. A couple of years later, Absalom found a way to kill Amnon because of what he had done to Tamar. Then he fled to another kingdom and stayed there 3 years. Finally, King David was persuaded to let Absalom return to Jerusalem. But the king said, he must go to his own house. He must not see my face. 2 Samuel 14:24. In all Israel, there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his foot, there was no blemish in him. 2 Samuel 14:25. Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Finally, the two were reconciled and they met. In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, What town are you from? He would answer, Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there is no representative of the king to hear you. And Absalom would add, If only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that he gets justice. Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the men of Israel. 2 Samuel 15:1 to 6. He would solve all their problems if they would only come to him and ask. So you see, politicians have had a superior model to sway the hearts of men since ancient days. If Absalom were alive in America today, he would be elected president in a heartbeat. Continuing this kind of action for several years, now Absalom decided that he was to become king in place of his father, David, in place of his father David, and set out to kill him. Nice guy, huh? This all ended in tragedy and the death of Absalom. King David was devastated in the loss of his errant son. Continue the saga. Now Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, I will be king. So he got chariots and horses ready with 50 men to run ahead of him. His father had never interfered with him by asking, Why do you behave as you do? He was also very handsome and was born next after Absalom. 1 Kings 1 5 to 6. Adonijah proceeded to have parties and surrounded himself with dignitaries of his own choosing. Solomon, the wisest man of all time. That would be part 4 of chapter 12. Well, I hope you got good information out of this part 3 of chapter 12. If you have any question, put it under the video that you're watching, and I will answer the question if I know the answer. If not, I will find you the answer. You can also contact me at jorgeeherrera.com, and we can start a conversation there. Anyway, all this information is about telling you to be independent, not to be a slave. And what better way to be independent than being able to control where you deposit your money. And that's what the infinite banking concept can do for you. And I can help you set up this solution, this dividend paying whole life insurance contract with a mutual company. So contact me and we'll start a conversation. Thank you for listening or for taking a look at this video, and I'll see you on Friday with part 3 in Spanish.